Okay, my name is Rabbi Benjamin Blau. I have the privilege of serving as the Rabbi at Greenwood Synagogue, and therefore I had the honor of knowing Rita for a long period of time. I'm going to start off with a parak of Tehillim, a chapter from Psalms. Then I'm going to say words of eulogy, and we're going to have the reading of an appropriate poem. Then we're going to call up Shalom Schwartzman, family member. Since it is Rosh Chodesh, we're not going to say the typical Kel Mole, but we're going to say something else in its place. And then we'll do the actual kfur, the actual burial. So we'll start off with the parak of Tehillim. It is parak of Gimel, chapter 23. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo etzor, binos neshe yarbitzein yomei menukos yinahaleini, nafshi yishoved, yadkein maglei tzedek leman shemo, kam ki elek begeitz amaves lo yivarah ki ato imoti, Shiftakom mishantecha himo yenachamuni, tarak lefanai shulchan neged tzoreroi, dishanta b'shemen roshi kosi rivoya, achtov v'chesed yudefuni kol yemei chayai, v'shavti beis Adonai liorech yamim. Before I start, I do want to take mention of, we have the privilege of having Rabbi Chaikin, the Rav from Chabad, who has come also to pay tribute to Rita. So we've gathered together to pay our final respects to Rita Pollack, Rivka Bas Avram, Ufredo Leah. Rita is a Holocaust survivor, beloved mother of Joey and Hetty, grandmother of Jory, Stacy, Adam, Brian, and Laura, great-grandmother of Gabi, Zara, Jack, Kyle, Noah, Allison, Joey, Brendan, and Connor, and of course, very importantly, their sister, the late Aaron, Aaron, Chaim, Yassi, Feige, and Goldie. Really today, as we gather together, it's really one of the last of her generation. She was an incredible survivor, who despite her small frame, had a fierce determination that carried her throughout her life. If you notice when I mentioned her names, I noted both her parents. And the truth is that was so important because she worshipped them, particularly her mother. And throughout her life, everything that she did, particularly the mitzvot she would engage in, like lighting candles, she'd always say it was in her memory of her parents. This is the way my mother used to do it. I used to call her often, and when she would talk about the things she was preparing, the food she was making, it was always, this is the way my mother would do it. Always continuing on their legacy. It was such a part of who she was. Her fondest memories, and in many ways the best times of her life, came from her childhood in Vilava. Born in 1928, she was the youngest of 6 siblings. We mentioned them all, but one brother died at 18 months, and another pair of twins had passed in utero. She did not tell me this is from the family. You'll see the next line why I'm saying that. She was spoiled. She did not say this to me, and sickly as a child. She recalled sitting right next to her father on his right side, singing Zmiros louder than her brothers. She had her own cow that she could milk. She was a good student in Cheder and was generally a very good girl, even if she was a Musser Ketzel. For those who don't speak Yiddish, that's a title still. She really was very fond of those days, and she would often remark how those were the best days of her life. All that changed, of course, when the Nazis came. Because her grandfather was forced into making uniforms for the Hungarian army, the family was kept alive until April 16, 1944. They were able to be where they were, and right after Pesach, they were taken away. And this, of course, started a terrible odyssey of ghettos and concentration camps, eventually bringing her to Birkenau and Auschwitz. In Birkenau, she went in front of Mengele with her sisters and her mother. And Goldie, her sister, tried to save their lives by boldly saying that they were strong farm girls, even though it wasn't really true. They tried to make Rita look bigger and small and stronger and taller. Nonetheless, it was not successful, and she was initially sent to the left, meaning her death, until Feige saved her life by telling her to run through the fences. And this idea of the family protecting each other was from the start and all the way through. Later on, she repaid the favor, so to speak. When both were suffering from typhoid fever, Rita carried Goldie on her shoulders, literally carrying her to life. Her first determination allowed her to build a military airport with a broken wrist and survive a 3-month death march, walking barefoot because a guard liked her boots. She hated the cold. She hated the cold, and she survived unbelievable, terrible situations. She even managed to keep diamond earrings under her tongue during the entire ordeal. She was unbelievably determined. She did recall, the family recalled the unique acts of kindness that happened during these terrible times, like the guard who hid her in a closet saving her life, or the Russian young soldier who liberated her. After the war, she went to Budapest. The group was her mother, Rita, and her sisters Feige and Goldie, and eventually they found their brother Chaim. But Yossi had been killed. Later, much later, that haunted her whole life. And Hetty explained to me how they tracked down the dates of what must have happened to him, and they discovered that he had tragically died right before liberation. They did what they needed to survive. Goldie was the shiksa who made the deals, and Rita worked the black market while always taking care of her mother. They were rather b'marin than Uncle Harry Zinn, who had come to the U.S. way before the war, like World War I, and papers for her mother and Chaim, and the others, of course, had to come illegally. They came by ship to New York after spending Yom Kippur docked in Quebec. Rita flirted with the men on the ship, and within a week of arriving on the shore, she was already working, going to night school, and taking care of her mother. And you'll see that's the common theme. She was always doing everything, a million things. She enjoyed New York, but then her sister Goldie brought her and her mother as well to Cleveland. She kept up her pattern. She started working in a factory and continued taking care of her mother. Her husband saw her at a wedding and was very taken with her. He asked for her number, and she gave him the wrong one. And eventually he pursued her, and they got married in March of 1952. Initially they lived in Kinsman, then went to 142nd Street. After both Joey and Hetty were born, they built a house on Meadowbrook in 1958. And when I say they built the house, they literally built every aspect of that house, even down to the furniture. It was designed for 6 children, but in the end, her mother lived with them, and they had boarders. She continued to do everything. She loved her shul. That was part of our Chadash, and she was the vice president of the sisterhood. She cooked, she baked, and she worked, the expression of her family, like a horse. She worked really very, very hard. She would go, her husband would drive her twice a day to Sunny Acres, where her mother was to bring them food. That was their life. The house that they created together was amazing. The most incredible feature of the house is the beautiful backyard. The magnificent tiered garden with the incredible roses and all types of fantastic berries. Her children remember the special raspberry shortcakes that she made in the winter. The marriage was difficult, the divorce challenging, and afterwards it was just her and Hetty. When there was a fire burning down her house in 1978, she moved to Beechwood. And once again, she was incredibly busy. She was an amazing seamstress who could do wonders with anything. Whatever she touched turned to gold. She became very active in Greenwood Synagogue and took pride in all that she did. She loved to knit and to garden and loved animals, except for the deer who ate her handiwork. She picked up her grandchildren from school and made sure to make each one of their favorite foods. They recalled the little cups of orange juice and the perfect waffles she would make for them, each one the exact same. Later, despite her advanced age, she would play with her great-grandchildren in the same way. Food was important as it connected back to her parents, as I mentioned earlier. For Yom Tov, she'd make the kokosh, the markish, and the special horseradish, but you had to bring the jars back. She had tremendous compassion for the underdog, and even baked a cake for a city worker who had heard about the long hours he had worked to help his sick family members. What was so incredible was even as she got older, she kept up with technology. Brian, self-described favorite grandson, taught her how to use a computer, and then she discovered more on her own. She learned how to use the internet, was on Facebook, read the Czech newspaper, and even paid her own bills online. She connected with a friend in Prague, and then Hetty got into the Volova website, and she connected to a new group of friends, Ola and Marshall Katz. They were internet buddies, and she remembered everything about her hometown, which helped their searches immensely. In fact, it was due to her efforts. In 2017, on Yom HaShoah, they put her city on Shtetl Finder because of the work that she did. Until the very end, she remembered everything that had happened to her during the war. Hetty described to me how just a short while ago she was asked to be a witness for the survivors of Stutthof. Hetty helped her get all the files ready, served the Germans and the accompanying FBI agents food, and then listened as Rita described what had happened in exact, excruciating detail. The agents were sobbing. They could not believe how brave and courageous she was. Up till now, I've shared with you words of the family. I want to really add some of my own words. She was such an incredible part of the shul. I loved calling her. We would talk each week. She would tell me all her tzaras, and she would tell me, but I'm still here. I'm still here. And I would be fearful every week when I called her, if I didn't get her on the phone, God forbid, that the illnesses she was describing weren't there. I can't really imagine a Shili Yom Kippur without her. I can't. She was a mainstay, sitting with the family together in the front of the shul, coming for davening all the time, and again, with describing her hardships that she had. It was not an easy life. But she was proud of where she came from. She was proud of her family. She was proud of what she built. She was proud of continuing an unbelievable legacy. And that's the way I will always remember. A short lady, but huge in stature. It's hard to imagine Green Road Synagogue without Rita Pollack davening with us. The family did ask that we give special thanks to Bessie, who took exceptional care of her 7 nights a week, even wished her a Shabbat Shalom each Friday night. And I have to mention, even though she didn't give me permission, a tremendous thread of thanks to Sheila, to Hetty, to everyone who took such good care of her. It was unbelievable. Every time I would call on Friday, she would say, oh, Sheila brought me this, Sheila brought me this food, Hetty brought me this. And Hetty took care of her in her house the last few weeks, the last few months, really. And it's been hard. I would call Hetty and we would talk, and it was not easy. But she was a great lady. And her legacy will live on. It lives on, and everyone who's gathered here together live on the memories of those of us who were fortunate enough to cross paths with her. Yehi Zichra Baruch. May her memory be a blessing. Mara, please. Go. No? Hetty? Okay.
This is a poem, The Dash by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that the first came the date of birth, and spoke the following date with tears, but he said what mattered most of all was the dash in between those years. For that dash represents all the time that they spent alive on earth, and now only those who love them know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love, and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. And if we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger, and show appreciation more, love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash?
And as I noted, since it is Rosh Chodesh, we're not going to do the typical Kalmali memorial prayer, but I do want Shalom to come up and say another parakah.
Shir Lamalot Esayna El Hari Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Me'ima Adonai Yosef Shamayim Va'aretz Al Yitain Lamot Rak Lecha Al Yanum Shomrecha Hinei Lo Yanum V'lo Yishan Shomer Yisrael Adonai Shomrecha Adonai Silcha Yad Yeminecha Yomam HaShemesh Lo Yakecha V'yareach B'layla Adonai yishmarcha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzecha v'oecha me'ata v'yad olam.
Steve, I need to go a little bit your way. You could pull the strap a little bit first. And pull the strap a little. Three times. Okay, you're gonna have to go further. Use those ones too. Get them both legs. There. That sounds good. Starter. You want to grab those? Grab this one. There you go. You keep the line up a little. Move that microphone a little bit.
Take it off the board. Put it down again. If anyone else wishes to help in the mitzvah, yes, it's Shahana, please feel free to step forward.
say one more perfect Kalim and then we're going to say the Kaddish. The shorter Kaddish because it again, Rosh Chodesh. Shalom Allah, Timam Hakim Kotzika Adonai, Adonai Shmo B'Kolit, Yerad Nechel Tzibos, Tekal Tachanuno, Im Abonos Tishmor Ya Adonai Miyamos, Kim Bas Likal Amanti V'Rei, Kiviti Adonai Kivsa Nafshi, V'Livero Hapalti, Nafshi L'Adonai, Mishomrim L'Boker, Shomrim L'Boker, Yachal Yisrael Al Adonai, Kim Adonai Hachesed V'Imo Fedot, V'Hu Yivdes Yisrael, Mikol Aronosam, Kaddish, Yiskadash, 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 Amen. Happy birthday today. At least not today. הרב יזמן קריב דברו אמן יהי שמי הרב מברך ולא נאמר יסברך יסברך יפעל וגם יסנעשה יסדר יסדר ויסדר יהי דקושה בריאותו גם מכל ברפסה ושירסה תשבחסה ונחמסה גם יאמר אמן יהי שלום הרב חיים עלינו כל ישראל ויבנו עליהם אמן שלום בעיניו ויעשה שלום At this point we've concluded our service. I'm going to ask everyone gathered to please swear 2 rows alongside so the mourners can pass through and start the process of confirmation.